Hello and welcome. I'm Dave. Today we will apply what we have learned from previous lessons and complete a student challenge. And I'll provide links to all resources in the description below. I've got VS Code open and you can see I have a folder for lesson 16 and I already have all 3 files in it for lesson 16. And that's because today is a student challenge. Today's lesson is different. We're focusing on applying what we've learned instead of learning something new. And we will attempt to complete a 2-part student challenge. So I've got the terminal hiding my code so you don't see the code that's in these 3 files for now. Part 1 will be creating a new game called Guess My Number, and this will require you to take what you've learned from building the rock, paper, scissors game in previous lessons and apply it to a new problem. So let's look at how this game works first. So I'm going to launch Guess Number, the file that you see over here on the left side, from the terminal, and I'm in Windows, so I type Pi. If you're in Mac or Linux, you should be typing probably Python 3. And then I'm going to type the file name, guess_number.py. Now it's going to accept a name as we learn to pass in a command line argument and receive that with the argparse module. So I have -n for name, and I'll just pass in my name, Dave. When I press enter, it should launch the game, and it says, Dave, guess which number I'm thinking of, 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to guess 1, and we can see the result. It says, Dave, you chose 1. I was thinking about the number 1. So Dave, you win. Game count 1. Dave's wins 1, and my winning percentage is 100%. Then it asks if I want to play again or not, so I'll say yes. I'll choose 2. And it looks like I didn't get the number right. Once again, the game was thinking about the number 1, but I chose 2, so it says, sorry, Dave, better luck next time. Now it updates the game count. My win number is still the same because I didn't win, and it updated my winning percentage. Now it's only 50% compared to 100% before. Now, of course, we can quit this game as well, so let's go ahead and play one more time, though, just to see what happens if I choose a number that's not 1, 2, or 3. It just says, Dave, please enter 1, 2, or 3. So then it starts over. And that's what we would expect to do. So let's go ahead and pick another number. And I didn't win again. So now my winning percentage is 33.33%. I'll go ahead and choose Q to quit. And then we get the thank you for playing and goodbye, Dave. So a lot like our rock, paper, scissors game, but not quite. So you can take what you learned from that and now create this new game, Guess My Number. Now, after completing the first part of the challenge, which is creating the Guess My Number game, then we're going to move to the second part of the challenge, which is to build an arcade that will allow you to choose between rock, paper, scissors and Guess My Number. And this is going to require you to take what you've learned about modules in previous lessons and apply it to a new problem. So let's look at how the arcade works. So we launch it much the same way. I'll say pi and then arcade.py, and from there I'm going to pass in a name at the command line as well. And once we launch the arcade, it says, Dave, welcome to the arcade. Please choose a game, and I can choose 1 for rock, paper, scissors, or 2 for Guess My Number, or press X to exit the arcade. So I'm going to choose 1 for rock, paper, scissors, and you can see the game launches now. So I'll choose 1 for rock and Python 1, but I'll go ahead and quit. And when I quit the game, it says, Dave, welcome back to the arcade menu. Please choose a game. So we're not going to exit the game entirely or the arcade from our rock, paper, scissors game or from the Guess My Number game. We're going to exit it when we're back at the arcade menu. So now I'll choose Guess My Number and we'll see if it works the same way. So I'll guess a number and I did not win, but I'll go ahead and quit. Now it says, Dave, welcome back to the arcade menu. Now, if I don't choose 1, 2, or X here, I'll press 5 again. It's going to just start over and say, Dave, please enter 1, 2, or 3. And I guess I need to change that to 1, 2, or X, actually. So I need to update my code just a little bit. Go ahead and do that in yours as well, because the options here are 1, 2, or the letter X. So now I'll just press X to leave the arcade, and it says, see you next time, bye, Dave. So you've got the idea here for the arcade and how it should work. You should be able to launch either game from it or exit the arcade. And when you launch those other games, when you quit those games, you should go back to the arcade. So that's a different challenge, and you're of course applying modules and other things you've learned along the way to conquer this challenge as well. So So now you should be ready to pause the video and attempt to build the Guess My Number game, part 1 of the challenge. So when you finish building the Guess My Number game, come back to this video and I'll show you my code for the game. So I'll see you then. Okay, we're back and ready to review the code for the Guess My Number game. So I'm in the guess_number.py file that I created. I'm importing a couple of modules just like we did in the rock, paper, scissors game. I've imported sys and random. Notice I don't need an enum now like we did in rock, paper, scissors. Now I create this parent function because we're still going to need a closure to keep track of the game count and player wins. So I have this parent function called guess number, and then inside, after I set the game count and player wins to 0, I initialize those values essentially. Then we have our next function, which is play guess number. Here, of course, we need those values. We're going to get the name from a param, by the way, which also has a default of player 1, if nothing else. And we're pulling in the non-local name and then non-local player wins right now. Not game count yet, but we will later. And then, much like rock, paper, scissors, we have an input with the player choice. And much like rock, paper, scissors, if they don't choose the correct thing, we go ahead and use recursion to launch this play guess number once again. So we call it and it starts over from the top. Then we have the computer choice decision here, and it's just a random choice between 1 and 3. We did that in rock, paper, scissors as well. Now we go ahead and print saying, personalizing the message as well, and the saying you chose, and give the player choice. Now the player choice up here was a string, and that's fine to put in here. We didn't need a number at this point. And then, of course, we say, I was thinking about, and put the computer choice here. It is also a string. And if it wasn't, we're still using these F strings, so it would make the conversion without us using those class initializers as we previously did when we were concatenating strings. But down below, we go ahead and do make those numbers. They were both previously strings in player choice and computer choice. Now they're numbers in player and computer. And we're going to use those as well. So here we're looking at decide winner, this function, and we have player and computer. We need to once again bring in the name and player wins. And now we're going to compare player and computer. And if they are equal, because that means we've guessed the number correctly, we go ahead and we increment player wins with our plus equals. And then we return the phrase here saying you win. If not, we say sorry, better luck next time. So that's returned, and then we hold the value that's returned from this function in game result as we pass in player and computer, the two params that it receives. Now these are argument values being passed in, and we print the game result. Now here is where we need the game count, and this is just like we did in rock, paper, scissors as well. So we increment the game count. Then we're going to output the game count. We're going to output the number of player wins. Now this is new. We have an F string here saying your winning percentage. Now inside of the F string, we can calculate that winning percentage by dividing player wins by the game count, and now we're formatting the output of that calculation as well. And we went over some of that formatting when we learned about F strings. So we have a colon here, then a .2, which means we want 2 decimals, and the percent sign. So we're going to display that as a percent. And then we ask if they want to play again, just like rock, paper, scissors, and we handle that the same way, whether they want to play again or maybe they don't want to play again. And of course, they have to enter in the correct number or it just loops back through. Then if play again, we're going to use recursion once again and launch the play guess number function once again. But if not, then we're going to go ahead and print the thank you for playing. Now here's something that's just a little different because we want the guess number file to be able to run on its own. And if that's the case, then that means name will equal main. So if that's the case, we're going to use the system exit and exit out of the game when they choose to quit. But if not, say it's launched from that arcade file, then we just want an empty return here, which will go ahead and exit out of this function. And that would take it back to the parent function that it will be in the arcade file. So we do need to have a conditional here based on whether the file is launched by itself, where name equals main, or if this file is actually a child, which would be running from the arcade. So then we just have an empty return. And then, of course, at the end of this function, we're returning play guess number so we can create the closure that we learned about. So that is what is happening there. Now we're here saying if name is equal to main, we're going to go ahead and parse those arguments passed at the command line, which should be a name. And then when we get down here, we go ahead and finish creating that closure because we set guess my number equal to the guess number function that receives the name from the arguments. And then we call the guess my number function. And that once again goes back to our lesson on closures. So a little simpler than rock, paper, scissors. Much of it is the same. And we were able to remove a few things as well. I hope you did good on this challenge. Now with the Guess My Number game complete, you are ready to take on part 2 of the student challenge where you build an arcade menu that allows you to choose between rock, paper, scissors or Guess My Number. So pause the video and come back when you're ready to see my solution. We are back and ready to review the code for the arcade menu. So at the top of this file, we're once again going to import the sys module. Then from the RPS file, which we have rock, paper, scissors in, we're going to go ahead and import RPS. And from the guess number file, we're going to go ahead and import the guess number function. Now quickly, I want to just go to the RPS file because the same thing that we did in the guess number file, the only thing I changed in rock, paper, scissors from previous lessons is when we exit the file. So once again, if name equals main, then we use the sys.exit, and that's because we called the rock, paper, scissors function directly from this file. If not, if it's called from the arcade file, for example, we're going to say else here and just return and have an empty return. So we go back to working with the code in the arcade file. So just highlighting that in the RPS file, the same as guess number. And that's the only change to rock, paper, scissors from any previous lesson. Okay, in the arcade file now, after the imports, it's structured much the same as we have defined other functions essentially. So we're starting here with play game. And then we have name equals player 1 as well, just as a default, just in case. Now, the first thing I do, we don't have a closure here, but we are defining this welcome back variable as false. It's a Boolean value. And that's because I want to give a welcome back to the arcade menu when we come back from either one of the games. Say we played rock, paper, scissors, we quit, and we come back. So here we only do that if welcome back is equal to true. Now notice we started a while loop right here. So I say while true. So it will be a loop that just continues if it is always equal to true, if we don't exit the loop in some other way. So if we come back to the arcade, we're still going to be in this loop and we'll get that welcome back message if welcome back equals true. Now notice I'm not setting welcome back equal to true until after we check the player choice, because if they make the wrong choice, say the number 5 instead of 1, 2, or X, as we have for choices here, then it's going to relaunch this function. Now we wouldn't want to give a welcome back to the arcade menu message every time that they chose a wrong number. So I wait to set that welcome back equal to true here. Now this is much like we had in both games where we have the input and we check that input and we give a message if the input is not what we directed the user to input. After that, we have a conditional if, else if, and then an else here. So if player choice is 1, they have chosen rock, paper, scissors. Now we have the name value being passed in here as a parameter. So down here, we use that and we create that closure. Remember, we imported RPS. So now we set rock, paper, scissors equal to RPS with the name being passed in. And then we call rock, paper, scissors. And that is that closure that we created there. So it could keep track of the game count and the wins for Python and the user. But if player choice is 2, then we do the same thing for guess my number. It also uses a closure. So we set guess my number equal to guess number, where we're passing in the name value, and then we call the guess my number function. And now the else. So essentially here we're checking to make sure it's 1, 2, or X. But down here, we don't need to at this point. So we know if it's not 1, 2, it's going to be X. So now we just say, see you next time, and we use the system to exit the arcade. That's the full arcade function. It's not that big. Now, we do have the if name equals main. So if we launch the arcade from the arcade file, this is where we use the arg parse to get the name. And then down here, we have our welcome to the arcade message that's only going to happen the one time, right after it's launched. And then we just launch play game and pass in the args.name, which launches our play game function from up here. So I hope you did well on both of these challenges. If not, hey, it's no big deal. We're learning. So you might have picked up a thing or two that you hadn't encountered before. Although we did go over this information, sometimes it takes some time to learn how to apply it all. And I think learning how to apply what you have learned is very important. And you're only going to do that by trying to create some of your own things as well. So now that you have this code for an arcade and you can call any game you want, think of a couple other games you would like to create. What are some other simple games you might create that you could add to this arcade? So keep learning, and I'll see you next time. Remember to keep striving for progress over perfection, and a little progress every day will go a very long way. Please give this video a like if it's helped you, and thank you for watching and subscribing. You're helping my channel grow. Have a great day, and let's write more code together very soon.